almost like Avatar. Like everything radiates this amazing energy, and nothing has ever felt so good. When people say, well, what do we do on the other side? Like, what do you mean, like eternity? Like, how bored would I could have stood in the grass for 100 years and not gotten bored of the experience. That like it's just soul fulfilling.
I'm here today with Amber Kavanaugh, who in 2021 had two major strokes during her sleep, which caused a near death experience. And she is here to share those with us today. Amber, thank you for joining me. I'm really happy to have you here with me.
Thank you for having me. I'm grateful.
And so you had two strokes, which must have been absolutely terrifying. For one, far too young than what we think of, a stroke victim to be.
Yeah.
But not only that, you had to kind of learn how to relive your life. And in the process of having these strokes, you had a near death experience where you actually died or came near death, and had to process that as well. Take me back to that night when you had your stroke. You were being transported to the hospital, and
Yeah.
what happened then?
So I had the strokes again in my sleep. It was right before Christmas. I think it was December 23rd is when I had them. And strokes aren't painful. They don't wake you up. So I didn't wake up when I had them. And so by the time I woke up, most of the damage was irreversible at the time. But I woke up. I was completely paralyzed on my right side. I had no language. I could say two words, my sister's name and the F word, which was super fun. And long story short, my husband obviously called 911. I think it was around 4:30 in the morning when I woke up and fell out of bed because I didn't know I was paralyzed. So I tried to get up. And I got to the hospital in my town, which is it's a good hospital, but it is quite small. And they gave me the medication that if the stroke is recent enough, will reverse the symptoms of the stroke. And we had no idea how long it had been since the stroke happened, long enough to complete one stroke and cause a secondary stroke. So it was a while. And the medication didn't work. It didn't help at all. And my hospital can't do brain surgery, which is the next option was to remove the clot, because I had a carotid dissection and that caused the strokes. And so they life flighted me to a bigger hospital with a neurosurgeon that could do the brain surgery. And when I was in the helicopter, the sun hit my face, and my husband was there. Normally, family doesn't get to go with you on life flights, but they said more than likely I was going to die on the way to the hospital, and they didn't want me to die alone at Christmas. And so my husband got to go with me. So he was sitting next to me, and he kind of raised his hand to block the sun because I was starting to get really red and looking hot, which we later learned happens when you are starting to die. Like you can get like a fever, and my brain was swelling a lot. And he tried to block, and I like moved. I couldn't talk, and so he put his hand down, and the sun hit my face. I closed my eyes, and I woke up on the other side. There was no tunnel of light or I'm in the clouds or somebody calling me there. It was just, I was in the helicopter, I was in this body. I was so scared because it was about an hour and a half from when I woke up to when I got in the helicopter, maybe a little bit longer. And I was terrified. And all of a sudden, I am in this beautiful garden. It was, I don't know how to explain it other than almost surreal. Like there's colors there that don't exist here. There's like the grass and the flowers and the water, like every piece, every particle or everything sort of emanates with this golden light that I interpret as like the light of God. I'm not religious. I used to be, but that's what it feels like to me. It's like golden rainbow glowing. And I wasn't alone. When I opened my eyes, I was standing on grass, kind of in the middle of a little field. And there was a little, I don't know, like pond type thing with a creek going off of it that went off to the side. And ahead of me were my guides. And before the stroke, before all of this, I know a lot of people don't agree with my profession, but I was a psychic medium. I was born being able to see dead people. Was born with a psychic gift as well. I hated it and denied it until I was about 35. And then I accepted my gifts and was working as a psychic medium. So I knew my guides, and two of them were there. Um, and then off to sort of the left, I guess, was a bunch of my uh, crossed over family members and some of my pets, which I was like, well, that's kind of nice, right? Like my childhood dog that I got when I was 13 was there. My really needy chihuahua that I got when I was 20 was there. And then, strangely enough, one of my dogs that I had then was there, and it was still alive. She was almost 18. So we were planning to put her down after Christmas. It turned out she died 4 days after the stroke because she just old went into crisis because she had to stay with somebody else. And then to the right, there was this giant group of people, and they looked like all different um, times, like people from the 1800s, from the 1600s, from the future. And that I knew because I could recognize their souls in them were all my other lives that I was living. And so it felt like I was there for 50 years. Like I stood there with my feet in the grass and my eyes closed, just feeling the energy of everyone around me. You don't have to talk, it's all telepathic. So I didn't have to go up to my family members to know that they were going to be okay. The other one, people like the other group that were with my family members were my husband and kids. And my husband and kids are very much alive. But they, like our higher selves, are always on the other side. And I knew without a shadow of a doubt, if the choice was to leave my kids, like, and not see them until they died, that wouldn't even have been a choice. Like I would have had to go back right away. So I needed to know, my soul needed to know that they would be with me no matter what. um, the sort of, I guess, strange thing to explain to people here is there is no why. Why disappears. We don't have to ask why because you understand everything. So as I walked up to my guides and knew in my heart that I had to make this decision, and there was not a time limit because there is no time there, but I needed to make this decision whether or not I was going to go back. um, I didn't have to go, oh well, what about this, or what about, like I didn't have to really delve into it too much because I knew, and I was able to see, and my guides helped me see what was going to happen if I didn't go back, how my kids would be, my husband, my family, and then what will happen if I did go back, and the sort of sequence of events that I will go through. And so I again would think about it a little bit, and then I would go over to the water and put my feet in the water and just relax and feel the energy of the other side and everything about it. And then I would go back and be with my guides again. Okay, well, show me this or that or the other thing. And then I would go stand in the grass again. As this was all happening, my physical body was in the helicopter. We landed in the bigger hospital. They got me to a room to start assessing me. And after a little bit, had a grand mal seizure because my brain was swelling too quickly for my body to handle it. And so I had a quite long grand mal seizure before they could stop it and give medication and stuff like that. And my guide said, the decision needs to be made before the end of the seizure, because if you are going to die, the seizure is going to go on long enough that you're not going to be able to recover, and you'll live a couple of hours after that, and then that's when you're going to die. But I wouldn't regain consciousness at all. And so I knew all of this, but again, there still was no pressure. Um, and then I was able to check on everybody. While I was there, I could see my kids. They were with my parents going to like pack to drive because it was about a 2 hour drive to the next hospital. I could see my sisters and their families all panicking. It's 2 days before Christmas. I was supposed to put on a huge Christmas dinner for the first time since COVID. So like everybody is panicking. I could hear them bargaining in their heads with God, even though all of them except one are not religious. You go right to bargaining. Like, if you let her live, I will XYZ. Because the doctors said, like, when I was going in the helicopter, to everyone, she's probably not going to make it for you to see her again. So say everything you need to say to her right now, like essentially say goodbye, including my kids. My husband wasn't going to let them in the room because he thought it would be too scary, because I was scared. Um, and the charge nurse, bless her, said, you let them in. If you don't, they will hate you forever, because you will have taken like that last moment from them of seeing their mom. And so all of that was happening, and I was able to see it all, but it didn't stress me out. I didn't feel sad for them. I didn't feel like I was disappointed. It wasn't like how I am as a mom. Like, if my kids are hurting, I'm like, oh my gosh, what can I do for you? I just want to fix it. I'm so sorry. Like, let's talk about it, that sort of stuff. It wasn't like that. I was just like, okay, we all planned these lives. And I know without a shadow of a doubt, no matter what decision that I make, they're going to be fine. And I'll be fine. They also showed me what was going to happen if I did come back. And they were very clear that the first 16 months, or the first 6 months, you will regret this choice. You will wish you would have died. And that was very true. It was horrible. But then they said that first 18 months, like the first 6 would be awful, awful. But the first 18, it will be the hardest time you have ever lived. And I haven't had an easy life. It's not fun being born, being able to see dead people and feeling like you're crazy and trying to fit into a world that doesn't feel like it's made for you. And so they really like emphasize, like, it will almost break you, and you need to be prepared for that. It's not going to be sunshine and rainbows and roses. It's going to be a very, very difficult struggle. So I came back fully aware that that was going to be true. I don't think, like, it all sounds fine and dandy when you're in friggin' heaven and they're like, oh, it's going to be so wonderful. When you get back into a human body that is paralyzed, can't talk, can't eat, can't walk, can't go to the bathroom, can't do anything. It's a lot harder than it looks when you're just watching from the outside. And I wasn't rushed. There was no pressure. They weren't telling me what to do. But as soon as I made the choice to come back, literally the second it crossed my mind, I'm going to go back. I was no longer in the garden. There was no goodbye or anything. I wasn't in the garden. I was in, like, kind of, a lot of people talk about, like, when they get surgery or something, they're like kind of floating in like light above their body until they go back in their body. It was that. So I was in this like light filled waiting room. I couldn't see the other side anymore. I couldn't see like all the people I could see before. I could see my body. I'm kind of above it. I can see my husband because he was there. And then it's like the like millisecond that the seizure was over, uh, I went back in my body, and I was just regular human, and I was unconscious then. I think for like a day and a half, it was a very big seizure, and my brain was very, very swollen. Um, yeah, and so I woke up, and everything they said was going to happen became reality, and that was my next struggle, because it was not easy.
It doesn't sound like it would be an easy task, especially just from what they said to you. And leaving, what a beautiful place. That must have
Yeah.
been a hard choice to make.
Yeah. A year after. So like the stroke happened in December, a year April, I started trying to paint what I saw on the other side, like the flowers and the colors, but we don't have colors. Light colors exist there. The closest thing that I've seen to it, there's a movie about a little girl's NDE. I think it's called like Miracles from Heaven, maybe. And they have only a short clip of when she went to the other side, and it was like a almost like Avatar, like everything radiates this amazing energy, and nothing has ever felt so good. When people say, well, what do we do on the other side? Like, what do you mean, like eternity? Like, how bored would I could have stood in the grass for 100 years and not gotten bored of the experience. That like it's just soul fulfilling.
I think that movie Avatar is so beautiful, and I always think how wonderful it would be to be in like a forest like that where everything's
Yeah.
just alive and vibrant, and you actually got to go there.
Well, and everything is related to everything else. Like I could feel what my family was thinking, like my crossed over and pets. I could feel what they were feeling through the grass. I could feel what my guides were feeling, or the trees were feeling, or the water, standing in the water. Like everything is completely connected and has like I think I don't know, a couple of weeks before the stroke, um, I ordered this necklace because it just called to me and I couldn't understand why. And I got it 3 days before the stroke, and I hadn't really done anything with it or took it out of the box. And I'm like, I don't know why I needed it so bad, but this is the closest I've seen to like God's light, like the rainbow kind of golden glow.
Do you have any of the paintings that you made?
Not right now because they are all at a printer to be scanned. But they are in my book and all over online. But I can show you just a really quick, um, a little kind of clip of them. Oh, here's a few. Like they're all. I have a ton online, and I've tried to like paint all the dimensions and like all. There you go.
Oh, wow. There's
Well,
a lot of them, huh?
right? Like I want to paint it. And how do you paint something that doesn't exist here? It's so frustrating. But yeah, so I paint a lot now.
And they're in your book, so people that want to
Yeah.
check those out, they can see them in your book. Um,
Yeah.
you said, you were born with these psychic medium gifts. Did they change after your near-death experience? Did they deepen or anything like that?
Yes. So they before the stroke, I had really good boundaries, and I had been working, like doing live events and classes and groups, like tons of stuff, and like Facebook lives and that kind of thing. And I had good boundaries. Like it was very manageable. I didn't feel how I felt when I was young. Like it was my life, and I loved it. And I woke up from the stroke, and again, like I couldn't talk. I couldn't really do anything. Um, and I was quite confused a lot of the time because my brain was still like it takes weeks for the swelling to go down. And so it's Christmas when I woke up fully, I think it was like Christmas Day. And so I'm in the neuro ICU, and the nurses obviously it's like 1 to 2 patients, right? So they're in the room a lot. They're checking on me. They're all that sort of, and they keep coming in, and they're like, oh my gosh, I just feel like I know I couldn't communicate well, but my eyes were open. I feel so bad for her. Can you like, she has kids. It's Christmas. I can't even, I like, it broke my heart to see her kids this morning. And they around me, and I'm like, what is going on? Like, why are they saying all of these things? And I understand it's sad and it's Christmas and they kind of pity me, but I don't want to hear it. Like my eyes are open, and I couldn't understand what was happening because I was very brain injured. It wasn't until my husband was there And he's sitting next to me and he's saying, "Oh my God, I don't even know what I'm going to do. Like, if this is my wife forever, I don't know if I can do this. Like, she can't walk, she can't eat." And I looked over at him and I, like, with a glare, because half of me was paralyzed. And he's like, "What? What's wrong?" I'm like, I didn't realize he wasn't saying it, he was thinking it. And so he was not at all out loud saying, like, "Oh my God, if this is my wife forever, like I can't, oh my God." And the nurses were not saying, "Oh, poor girl, like she has," they're not saying it out loud. They were thinking it. So that was definitely not super fun. I always say I read souls, I don't read your thoughts, because thoughts are very human, and I don't really care what you had for dinner last night or that sort of stuff, right? But when I woke up and was so connected to the other side, the telepathy that you have there kind of transferred over. And it took me, I still struggle with it sometimes. It took me months to learn to control that and set that boundary. Because the reality is, 80% of people that see you after having some massive, massive strokes, and you look awful, you can't talk. I talked kind of like a baby and very monotone when I was learning. Like, I didn't have any ability to do like inflection. So, like, going up at the end of a sentence if it's a question, that kind of stuff. They pity you, and all they think is pity. She's never going to be the same. Who is this person? And it's not fun to participate in their thoughts. After I set some boundaries, it got a lot better, and my gifts got a lot stronger and easier. It doesn't take as much energy now like it did before. So things definitely shifted, but I'm now back in control of it.
And you said that afterwards was a big struggle for you to heal, and you were expected to not even survive. Do you
Yeah.
think your experience helped you to heal? Because most people in your
Uh,
position probably
A
wouldn't.
100%. Yes. So my neurologist calls me his miracle patient, because before I went to the other side, when they did the first no, CAT scan, CT scan, I was blind in my right eye. My eye was all the way in the back, which means you're completely blind, which is very normal for the type of stroke I had. And when I woke up, I could see. They said I would never, because I didn't even, it's in my chart, I didn't even have a shadow of movement before the TPA or after the TPA, not even a shadow. So, like, they would pick up my arm and I would just drop it. I could not move at all. And then I woke up after being unconscious for a couple of days. Within 24 hours, I was moving my toes, feet, legs. I could lift. I could use this joint. I couldn't use this. It took me a while. Um, I could walk at my first follow up after like, I was walking to the bathroom, I think on December 27th. And they were just like, "I don't understand." Here, I actually opened my book. So just in case people don't believe it's a massive stroke, because people go, "No, that obviously it was like a TIA." This is in my book. All of this is stroke, and all of this is stroke. And it went all the way through my brain. So this is the left side of my brain. All of that is completely gone. Yeah. So they all call me a miracle, which I have to agree, because I shouldn't have been able to talk, eat, go to the bathroom, like all of that.
Definitely a miracle. And thank
Yeah.
goodness that you were able to come back and be with your family, um,
Yeah.
far too young, like we discussed before, to die of a stroke. That would be
Yeah.
absolutely horrendous. You said that you weren't a religious person. You used to be religious, but you're not religious anymore. Did your experience have anything to do to change that, or was that something that happened prior?
Um, no, so when I was younger, um, I was not, I wasn't doing well as a young teen. And I was definitely going down the wrong path. And then I kind of had like a spiritual awakening or a vision that if I kept doing what I was doing, it was not going to be good. Or I could choose this other way. And didn't know what it was. I could just see like light. And I chose light. And so my 15-year-old brain translated that to religion. right? Light, God, religion. And so I started going to church. I went to, I think, 10 of them before I found one that kind of fit. And I went to church. I raised my kids in the church until I accepted my gifts, and they kind of yeeted me because they are not a fan of psychics. Um, and so now I would say I am spiritual. I still pray. I still believe in God. But I definitely, on the other side, there is no judgment. There just isn't, and there is no hell. And so there was not 1 ounce of judgment from anyone or any being I saw on the other side. And there was also no like concrete direction. Like you have to do this. This is you have to. And I know some people with NDEs, somebody like they go there and they see either a loved one or a being that says you have to go back. Like it's not a choice. You can have this break from your body so your body will stay alive, but you have to go back. You're not done yet. So I think my situation is a little bit different for compared to some NDEs and some humans. But so, yeah, religion is not necessarily my jam, but I don't kind of poo poo any religion. I feel like any faith is good, right? It doesn't matter what you believe in, whether it's a God, Mother Earth, whatever. Faith is such a huge part of being like a balanced human and feeling connected. You just have to connect to something, even if your faith is in you, right? So anything that you can have faith in that betters your life, go for it. I think it's all equally valid.
How did your experience change your view of death?
There's no fear there anymore at all. It was not painful. I will say it is painful being in a dying human body. I'm not going to gloss over and say, oh, no, that was totally fine. I was scared to death. I had no idea what was going on. I was so confused. I cried a lot because I couldn't talk. So being in a dying physical body, I definitely, 10 out of 10 would not recommend that. But the second I left my body, it is like the most warm homecoming you've ever experienced. Like you just know that everything makes sense and that all of it, like you just know everything. So I don't have a fear of death at all now. I know at some point we all die. Um, I do have a fear of having another stroke like that and my kids finding me in the morning or something like that. My kids didn't come into the like in the morning into the room. They didn't see me until I was in the hospital. And I think, yeah, so I do have fears around strokes and around the dying process if it's going to happen, if it's painful. But yeah, actual death, there's no greater gift, honestly. Doesn't mean you should go there before your time, but it is not scary.
Which is very comforting to a lot of people because I know death is one of the biggest fears that we face. And
Yeah.
it can really hold us back from living the best life we can possibly live. And not only our own death, but the death of our loved ones.
Yeah.
And to know that we're going to be reunited with them is so comforting. So you were reunited with
Yeah.
your loved ones who had passed on the other side, and they were still whole and they were still themselves.
Yep. And still, my one grandma, actually, because I've told this story before, but it's because it makes me happy. My one grandma was very religious. And they don't call them Mormons anymore. They're the Church of Latter-day Saints of Jesus Christ, I think. Anyways, and she had been Mormon her whole life. And when I started going to church, um, she would say, it's so nice, dear, that you go to church. It's just too bad it's not quite the right church, but you're going in the right direction. And so when I got to the other side, that was like her first thought towards me was, You were right. Like, we're all here. There's so and then my mother-in-law was there as well, and she was very Catholic, and she died of cancer, and when she knew she was dying, because she had been a nurse for 40 years, so she knew the process of dying, she needed to have her last rites read, because even when you're a really great Catholic, you still like, it's a process, right? You still have to have your last rites, and she like was adamant, no sedatives or anything like that to help the pain until saw her priest. And she was in the exact same spot as my grandma, my childhood friends, my nana, all of them.
The landscape there was similar to Earth. You said there was like grass and the water and you could walk around. Was it like a dream for you or did it feel very real?
It did not feel like a dream. It felt like home. And I knew the place. They did explain to me that's not the full other side. Like, you can't fully see the other side until you're dead, because it's almost too beautiful. It's too much for a human. And so I think a lot of NDEs either are in that very beautiful light or some form of like a garden, because it's like a in between. Like, it's not the extreme high energy of the other side, but it's also not the lower energy of Earth. And yeah, if that even is that could be the whole other side, and I would be perfectly happy to spend eternity there, knowing that there is even more knowledge, more people, more things to make sense of and to understand, and just more growth. I can't even imagine, but I think like humans, I don't think could come back from that. Like, when you go there until you go into your next life.
And you had a lot of information when you went over there. You kind of understood everything. Were you able to bring anything back with you?
Tons, tons. Yeah, I wrote a book about
Oh, yeah.
it.
So tell me about your
um,
book.
so when I was on the other side, they told me all the things that would happen, right? And they explained about the first 18 months and how horrible it would be. But they said, as that's happening, all these other wonderful things are going to be happening. So, doing like interviews, they said I would help bring collective enlightenment to more people, more understanding of sort of the process and the balance between here and the other side, and the purpose of us being here, that kind of thing. And then they told me I would write 3 books. I'm like, oh yeah, I can't write a word. I couldn't talk or spell when I woke up. I literally could not spell. Like, I couldn't do anything. I'm like, yeah, write a book. Give me a break. Like, this, somebody will have to write it for me, because there's no way. Sorry, no way that I'm going to write a book. And I think it was almost to the day a year. And people had reached out to me a bunch, like, oh, I'll help you write, or I'll help you, I'll like ghostwrite or whatever. And my guides are very clear when they want me to do something. And they were like, no, this is not it. No, no. And then I think in like October or November, um, a lady reached out, and it was just like, yes, this is what I'm supposed to do. And so I talked and she typed. And in 10 weeks, we wrote a book. And so, and then it was published last November, I think. I just self-published it because, I'm not famous and I can't get book deals and stuff like that. But yeah, so in 10 weeks from beginning to end. And then I also, at the beginning of each chapter, before the stroke, I wrote poetry quite a bit. And I lost the ability to write poetry. And then as I was starting to do the book, I was putting like the few poems I had from before that made sense into the book. And I'm like, I would really love if, there could be a poem at the beginning of each chapter. And it just didn't seem feasible. And then, just like painting, I woke up one day and I could write again. And so there is a poem at the beginning of each chapter that has to do with each chapter. So I kind of had to give up control. So, like, my human self, when I write, kind of goes to the side, and I let the other side kind of channel through me to give people what they need to hear. So yeah, it was for sure a miracle. I don't know how it happened, how, like, even still, I'm like, how did we write a book in 10 weeks? Like, that's just, and we only met once every other week. Like, it wasn't like we were working nonstop. I think we met like maybe 6 to 8 times and we had a book. So yeah, so now it's available on Amazon, but it tells the story of the stroke, of a little bit of my childhood and my life before, the NDE, coming back, and then the whole second half is all the lessons I learned. And then the last three chapters, each of my guides has a chapter, so it's like a Q&A for each of my guides.
You were sent back with a mission, and that was to like share your experience and the purpose of life. What did you find out about the purpose of life?
That we are here to learn, and we come here so joyfully. Like, even the people who plan very difficult lives, their soul understands why, like, why there's pain, why we suffer, why we go through these things. And we plan our lives perfectly in their imperfection. And that's so clear to me now. Doesn't mean I'm always like, yay, learning, this is great. Sometimes I want to, like, just lose it and quit and say I'm not doing it anymore. But we literally come here to experience what it is to be human, and the ups and downs. You would never recognize light if you don't experience darkness. And I think society tells us to be successful humans, we have to have the great job and money and car and life and all of that. That's not at all what they believe on the other side. Somebody who is open to learning, who walks through struggles and doesn't let it break them totally, or when it does break them, they can find light through the joyful things in life. We're here to learn. And I don't think um, humans have fully understood that through the decades. Like, we're always trying to one up each other rather than trying to, focus on what we're doing and why we're doing it and stuff like that. And then as a human, I think one of the things that really spoke to me was we aren't ever alone, literally ever. There is not one moment, good or bad, in your life where you have not had support from the other side, your guides, but also your loved ones. Everyone we've lost, they are always, always around us, and we are never alone. As humans, we now are like, we're more isolated but more connected than we've ever been in history. Like, I could tell you what's going on halfway around the world, but I can't tell you what's going on with my neighbor, or some of my friends, right? Because this is us now. We're sitting here, we can access everything, and we're so isolated. And understanding that even when we feel isolated, we are not alone, that we have support all the time, I think was a huge thing for me. Because somebody talking to dead people and being a psychic in the 80s, it was not easy. And I'm so grateful that I never was alone as a little girl.
How can we live more fully in our purpose?
Honestly, waking up every day and checking in with yourself. How are you doing? We, especially me, like, I definitely, having a very significant brain injury brings a lot of loneliness. A lot of people don't understand me now. And I still am grieving the person I was. And I can choose every day to wake up going, this freaking sucks. Like, I have so many deficits. I can't feel any of the right side of my body. And so I also have a ton of pain. Like, I could wake up every day and say, woe is me. My life is so hard. I had a stroke at 40. I wrecked my kids' lives. My husband is now, whatever, on and on. And I choose not to most days, maybe 6 out of the 7 days of the week. I choose joy, and I choose to wake up and think about my purpose here and what I'm doing to impact the world, but also the people around me and myself. Um, if you just choose learning, choose joy, and when you need to, choose sadness, choose pain, all of those things. Anything, like, if you are breathing, you are learning. You don't have to do XYZ, take this course or that course or buy that book, even though I've written a book. you know you have everything you need within yourself.
What are some of the most important lessons that you like to share with others from the other side?
Honestly, we do, like, when we plan our lives, we do plan themes. So one of my themes is patience. I am not a patient person. So they said in the first 18 months, I would um, learn pretty much a lifetime's worth of lessons in patience so that I could kind of fast track it to concentrate on other things. And so I think identifying your theme is important. Some of the themes are like caregiving, and caregivers don't take care of themselves. So then your lesson is usually around taking care of yourself before taking other care of other people. Um, Empathy, compassion. Like, there's so many different things. And if you can start to understand your themes and, what you're struggling with, and start to go, oh, okay, like, I think I'm getting this part of it, but I need a little bit of work on this other part. Once you start to understand and embrace it, your guides and your higher self will stop throwing it at you so hard. They will slow it down a little bit for you. And so, like, somebody like me with the theme of patience does not mean I came into this life impatient and I will leave this life the most patient person on the planet. That's not necessarily what it means. It means I will be presented with infinite opportunities to practice patience. And sometimes I will fail, and sometimes I'll do really good. But when I leave this life, I will have gone through almost all facets of what it means to focus on patience. It doesn't mean I will have mastered it, right? So if you can start to identify the themes that you chose before you came into this life, um, it does. I'm not going to say it gets a lot easier, but it doesn't. It's not as heavy. Um, oh, they also want to talk about the buffet thing, so I'll talk about that, I guess. My guides stand in the corner of the room when I'm doing any like spiritual type work. So they want to sort of explain how we plan our lives. Because when I say plan, I'm not meaning you as a human have planned this. There is no world where a child would plan or choose to be abused, or a partner would choose to be in an abusive relationship, or a child would plan to starve to death or be born in a war-torn country. No, your human self walks through it, but the themes of your life and the things you will go through are sort of all put together before you come into this life. And so a sort of analogy that works for my brain is, when we're going to plan a life, we go up to this life planning buffet, and you have your guides with you, and then there are specific guides that help plan lives. And so you go along and you've got your plate, and you like look at the things, you go, oh, okay, I could focus on this a little bit and maybe take some of that, and oh, I haven't really focused on this theme, and then I'm going to take this and that, and you get to the end of the buffet and you have your plate, and the guides that specialize in life planning look at it and they go, you know what, like, I think it's a little heavy on this one, put some of that back. Oh, you know what, I don't think you have enough of XYZ, put a little bit more of that on. And then once everybody has conferred and thought about it and stuff like that, you have your plate, you're ready, and you're like, okay, and you're ready to go into that life, right? So there is a rough frame of how your life is going to go, no matter what you do. So all those lives where we blame people and judge people, you have gone through that too. Like, we will all live a life where we are abused. We all will live a life where we are the abuser. We will all live a life where, this sounds bad, like where we like murder someone, maybe not on purpose, but we will all live a life where we are murdered or accidentally killed. We will all live a life where we are born in war. We will all live a life where we cause war. So we as souls will live every aspect of what it means to be human throughout time, because time and space don't exist on the other side. And so those things that, and I still do, and I catch myself doing it, but those things that we judge other people for, I guarantee you have done what you are judging them for.
That makes a lot of sense. I like the buffet analogy because
Yeah.
it does make sense. And that's kind of how you picture it in your head too. But the buffet kind of gives you a picture,
Yeah.
a way to describe it. So
Yeah, I just think, yeah, it's very human, right? Like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Your buffet plate, and if it's really heavy, you can't carry it, right? So you got to let a little bit go. If it's too light, you're going to get distracted and you're going to be off track, right? So, yeah, no, I have a few little weird analogies that make sense in my human mind.
I love that. And so if my viewers wanted to reach out to you or buy one of your books, how can they find you?
So on social media, I am the West Coast Medium, and my book, it's available on most bookstores, because in the first week it was like a #1 bestseller on Amazon in Canada, and so bookstores pick it up. But it's better for me if you buy it on Amazon. So you just go to Amazon. It's called At the Stroke of Eternity. This is in my hometown. I live on the west coast of Canada, so the pictures are just near my house, which is kind of fun.
Oh, that is fun.
Yeah, I'm not very techy, so like I don't have a really good working website. At some point, I will have that. And on social media, because anybody like me gets a lot of weird scammers that try to get money out of people. So I am verified on both Facebook and Instagram. So if it doesn't have a blue check mark, it's not me.
Good to know. And if you had one message for the viewers that they could take away from your experiences in this conversation, what would it be?
Honestly, kind of across the board, if you are breathing, you are living your purpose. Nobody needs to tell you what your purpose is, because your soul knows, and you are stronger than even you realize. I don't think, especially anybody that is drawn to something like this, talking about spirituality, or I think a lot of your viewers, it's grief, people grieving. You have more strength in your little finger than the average human does in their whole body, you know? So don't judge yourself, because you are doing it right and you're not alone.
Oh, that is beautiful and inspiring. Thank you, Amber, for being my guest
Yes,
today. It's been a real pleasure to have this time with you.
my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. I just want to tell you how much I appreciate you being here and supporting my channel. If you haven't already subscribed, please consider subscribing if you enjoy near-death experiences and other spiritually transformative stories. It helps the algorithm know that this information is useful and push it out to more people. And that's the goal, to get as many people to know that we are eternal spiritual beings and that we never die. Our bodies might die, but our essence will never die. And I want people to live with less fear. Let's all spread the word. Like, comment, subscribe, share, hit that little notification bell so you get all the notifications when my videos post. Thank you for all of your support. I'm sending love to you.